I'm Tara Monster, and I like to make things. Do you want to revamp a plain old shirt you don't wear anymore? Well, today I'm going to show you how to make a braided neckline to add some excitement to this boring old thing. If that sounds good to you, let's get crafting. Choose the shirt that fits you well. A lot of my tutorials use tops that are too large, but for this one, you'll want a shirt that fits you well. Make sure to select one with a nice scoop neck that's not too low or too high. This one is a little bit high, so our next step will be to cut it just a little bit lower. Let's head over to the craft table. My first step is to cut out the neck. To do that, I'm just going to follow along the seam in the back. And to cut the front, I'm going to fold it in half to make sure that I do it evenly. And now you're just going to cut along the neckline, and I'm going to make it a little bit lower, but still rounded into a nice scoop. And now we need to make a string to make our braid with. If your shirt is long, you can cut the bottom off and use that for your string. But I don't want to lose any length on this shirt because it's actually not that long on me. So I'm actually just going to use a scrap. Always save your scraps every time you cut up a shirt. In fact, I have a whole box of these because they always come in handy. I like to braid them into headbands or scarves or use them for projects like this. So I pulled these two scraps out of my scrap box, and I'm going to use them to make strings for the braid. To make this string, you're going to want to make it about 1 inch wide. And now we're going to cut a 1 inch strip. I lined it up on my table here at the 1 inch mark, but you can also use your 2 fingers. The width of my 2 fingers is almost exactly 1 inch. And don't cut all the way to the end because we're gonna need a really long string. In fact, you want your string to be at least double the width of your neck. So to measure that, I'm gonna look at my string here and see right now it's 1 width of the neck. So this needs to be at least double the length. So in order to make a string that's longer, all I'm going to do is cut this again back in the other direction. So we leave the string like here. In fact, we can cut it just a little bit further. And then we're gonna cut all the way back in the other direction. This is a really good way to use up your scraps and make them into ropes that you can braid with. Even if they're smaller scraps, they will still work for this. Now when you stretch it, it will curl it and make it into a rope. And to get rid of this part, you just cut it off so that it's the same width. And that is the reason why you start with a strip that's 1 inch, because once you pull it into the rope, it gets a lot thinner. This is way less than 1/2 inch now that we've stretched it. But so that is how you make a nice rope. And now we're going to use this rope to weave along our neckline. And this is a dark gray shirt, but I wanted to use a black piece of fabric because I think that it will contrast nicely with the gray. So I will have some black in my braid. And just to double check, we do want to make sure our rope is at least double the width of our neck. And then you also want quite a few extra inches so that you can tie it off at the end and you don't have to worry about running out of rope. So I think this one will be just long enough. I'm going to start 1 inch below the neckline, measured with my fingers, and make tiny little cuts about 2 inches apart from each other, all the way around the neck. And you do want these cuts to be very small, just enough so that you can put the rope through them. And they will stretch a little bit too, so just keep in mind that you do want them to be very small. In order to do that, I just pinch the fabric a little bit right where I want it and do a snip. So there we go, a little hole. And then we do 2 inches and the next hole. And we're just going to do this actually halfway around, and then I'm going to start the braid and just see how it looks, and then we'll finish the other half. And definitely make sure that you are only cutting through the top layer of fabric. We do not want to cut through to our back side on this project. Okay, and now I'm going to start weaving. To start the weaving, you want to fold your string into a loop. Make sure that you have a little bit of extra for when we tie it off at the end. I would say this is probably about 3 inches. And you're going to push your loop through the hole from the back side to the front side. And then you're going to take your string and make another loop that's the same size as your previous loop, and then push that through from the back side to the front side. Then you're going to take your loop and put it through the previous loop and pull it down. And this is how you start your braid. So we'll just continue to do that. Measure a loop that's the same size. Put it through the back side. And then loop it through the previous loop. Starting to look pretty nice. And just flatten it out as you go. And then I'm gonna do one more, and I wanna try on the shirt just so I can see how it's going to look. I might need to make my neckline lower. I might need to maybe differently space my holes. I just wanna double check how it's all looking. Okay, I think we're ready for the try on. And our halfway point try on is looking really great so far. I know it's hard for you to see because, well, it's black on gray, but I'm gonna get a little bit closer and you can see the braid. I think for my second braid, I'm gonna do a little bit more of a contrasting color. But yeah, we're about halfway. It's looking really good. And so I'm just going to keep going with it. And now we're just going to continue going the rest of the way around. I'm gonna make more holes here. Remember they're 2 inches apart and about 1 inch down, 2 fingers width from the neck. Just do a tiny pinch and a tiny cut. Make sure we're not pinching the back side in there too. And then one more right at the top here. And now let's finish our braid. Through the hole, about the same length, and through the previous one. I'm just gonna stretch my rope a little bit more because I'm getting close to the end of it here. Even though I left some extra, it is looking like I might run out. But that's okay because I do have a way to fix that. Okay, yeah, so we did run out. What I'm gonna do is take just another piece of string and I'm gonna tie them together. And when we braid it, you won't even be able to see the knot. And then we're just gonna tie these two together. Pull the knot nice and tight. And then you can cut off the excess. And now we can just keep going. So for my next loop, I'm just gonna make sure this little knot is on the underside. And again, I am just making sure to flatten and pull this out so we don't get too much puckering here. And to finish it off at the end, all you're going to do is take your extra piece, stick it through the loop, and then tie it around. In a little knot. Always make sure to double knot. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this end too. Double knot, of course. Really just gonna stretch it so I get enough to tie with. And then you can just cut off the excess. I'm gonna do that at the end because now I'm going to grab a second piece of fabric and I'm gonna make it a more contrasting color, and then I'm gonna do a second braid. And now I just want to show you how I'm going to make another long string for my second braid out of an extra sleeve that I had. So first I'm just going to cut off the seam. And then I'm going to cut along the bottom seam of it. And remember, we are making them about 1 inch wide. Okay, so 2 fingers or 1 inch. And remember, don't cut all the way to the end because now we're gonna cut the second part to make this double the length. We're gonna start with one end, making sure to leave extra. And we're just gonna put it through those same holes that we already cut. This one I'm gonna put right on top of the other one. First loop here, look for that second hole. Put your next loop through it. And then pull that loop through your first loop. Just like that. And just like before, make sure to flatten it as you work. Sometimes it takes a minute to find the hole because they're not very big. And it looks like our little knot is on the outside, so I'm just gonna move him a little so he goes back on the back side so we don't see him. So I'm just adjusting my loop sizes a little bit for that, but still looking really good. I'm really digging this contrast color braid. This looks really cool. And oh no, we did run out, but I think there's enough extra on this end. I'm just gonna kind of shift this along, and I've got these two tails, so I'm just gonna tie them together and do the same for the other side. Okay, and now we're all done with our braid. And then just to finish it up, we're going to cut off the tails on our knots. And another thing I've decided I want to do is I've got a little bit of neck still showing above. And it's just because I wanted to make my holes down far enough that, you know, they weren't gonna pull through. But now that it's all done, I actually just want to trim off this extra little bit because it will give it just a finished edge along the braid that'll look really nice. Being very careful to not cut my braid. Oh yeah, that's much better. And now for my favorite part, let's go try it on. I really love the way this turned out. The little bit of off the shoulder neck combined with the two braids definitely adds some fun to this top. I'm going to get a little bit closer so that you can see, because there is a black layer of braid and then a blue layer of braid on this dark gray shirt. Now you can see it a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please smash that like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then ring that bell so that you can find out when I make new content. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Choose a shirt that fits you well. Do you want to revamp a plain old... But for this one, you'll want a shirt that's fitted and... If that sounds good... Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and then ring that bell so that you can get notified.